Thank you. I'd like to welcome everybody to the second edition of the Hood Independent Podcast. I know it's been some time since we've recorded, but it was intentional. I wanted to wait and get through this election cycle just to see how everything worked out. And then also, I wanted to do an introduction, a brief introduction on the Hood Independent Podcast, because I know when I first started, we have the logo and the image on here, and I never explained to the people what this represents. So if you look at this image on this card, it has a microphone and it has a hoodie in the background. The microphone, or short for mic, would be my name. Most people call me Mike. So the microphone is Mike, which is me, and the hoodie in the background is Hood. So this image represents Mike Hood. So anytime you see the microphone and the hoodie, it's a word picture of my name. So I know people probably worry about why I'm using this image without clearly understanding what it represents. So I just want to clarify that, clear that up first of all. This, as I mentioned, is the second edition of the Hood Independent Podcast. And as we started out before, there's 6 topics that we talk about. The first one being political, the second one being religious or spiritual, the third one would be economics, the fourth one would be education, the fifth one would be social events, and then the last S would be just special events, trying to cover as many topics and ranges as possible. So today, starting the second season of the first letter, which is P, is going to be political. And so with that, as I stated, the reason I waited because I wanted to wait till after the election was over. So, to have some reflections on the 2022 election. I was looking at the national picture, but I want to more focus on the local picture. Here in Lucas County, they had a new district redrawn, district number 41, which takes in the area of Point Place, West Toledo, parts of Sylvania, and then other parts of Toledo as well. The candidate, or I should say the winner of that election, a young man by the name of Joshua Williams. He's a young African American Republican who has won that seat and carried that seat for the very first time. As far as I know from any research that I've seen, there's never been a black Republican, and color doesn't matter, but the point is he just happens to be African American that has represented that district. Like I said, it's a newly drawn district, and he is the first one to represent that district. To me, that was monumental because it's never happened before. Now, in a city, in a county that's dominated by Democratic politics, which is what makes this election so important, and it's not getting much press and it's not getting much attention to it. And that's why I bring it up, because I definitely want to bring light to it, and I definitely want to bring it to bear that it's something worth looking at, it's something to consider, it's something that's time, I believe, has come. We cannot continue to do the same thing we've always done, expecting to get better results out of it. I'm sure you all have heard that before. That's the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different results. So me, I am happy to see that this young man was brave enough to step out and go against the forces that were against him. Being, like I said, Toledo and Lucas County politics is dominated by one party, and he broke the mold on that, and he deserves some credit for that, and I intend to acknowledge that request. he will be sworn in Columbus. I couldn't get the exact date at the time of this broadcast, but in January, the beginning of January, he'll be sworn in to the State House in Columbus. And then, as I've been reaching out to members of his family, stating the fact that I think something needs to happen locally here in the district that he represents, also to let people know that he deserves to be celebrated. And I know other people and other firsts when they came about. We had all kind of parties and parades for people when they break the mold on different topics, and we want people to know that it's a moment of excitement. And this is, for me, is no different. It's not going to be swept under the rug because it's a one-party dominated area that he needs to have his flowers, so to speak. And so I just want to represent it again. Josh Williams will be the newly elected state representative for District 1441. And I say congratulations for that. Um, Myself, as I stated, the Hood Independent podcast, I am an independent in nature. I neither lean to the left, which is the Democratic side, nor do I lean to the right, which is the Republican side. They're both opposite extremes as far as I am concerned, and neither one of them are really fitting the bill currently for what we're trying to do, which is why I'm so happy with Mr. Williams again uh, um, carrying that district. Maybe we can get some traction and start doing things in a different way. I am, as I stated, an independent, which first of all means I'm a free thinker. I think for myself. I speak for myself. I don't have anyone controlling me, telling me what I ought to think, or how I ought to act, or the things I ought to believe in or not believe in. So as an independent, I'm independent in thought and independent in action. I'm also a conservative because I've talked to some people about these issues, and the first thing before you could ever get the word out of your mouth good, if your speech or your thought process does not line up with theirs, immediately they want to label you. Oh, you think that? Oh, you must be a Republican. I've had people tell me that. And the most irritating thing to me is when somebody else try to define me. No one gets to define me but me. And so I reject that thinking once again. No, I'm not a Republican. I am a conservative. Now, some of the things overlaps and some of the things are similar in the beliefs of conservatives and Republicans. They're synonymous, but they're not the same. And so that's the moniker I take on as being a conservative. So I say to some people, they say, well, what is a conservative? And for me, a conservative means the right, number one, to own property, the right to own a house, the right to enter into a business if I choose to have a business, and then the right of the individual. I believe in all those things. I believe in individual rights. I believe in the Constitution. I believe in the First Amendment, which is free speech. And at the time of this broadcast, with Elon Musk coming in and taking over Twitter, it's everywhere except on your local media. You're not going to see it because they're a part of the cover up and keeping the information away from people. So if you're only listening to the 6 o'clock news or the 11 o'clock news, you'll probably never hear this issue ever brought up because they are complicit in trying to take away people's free speech, which is their First Amendment right guaranteed under the Constitution, which I believe in. The Second Amendment, also the right to bear arms, I believe in it as well. I've heard people talk about it and try to define it and try to conflate it and speak of it in a way that's not accurate. They have their viewpoints on it, but the main reason for the Constitution is just like we said, we had just came out of a not the Civil War, but the Revolutionary War, when the 13 colonies were at war with Great Britain during the time of the Boston Harbor and the Boston Tea Party, where they dumped all the tea into the Tea Party, where they're saying that we're being taxed without representation. So it was taxation without representation. The people began to push back and to revolt against that type of oppression. So a war broke out during that time. And just across the Atlantic Ocean is where Great Britain was. The 13 colonies were on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. Now, the definition of a colony is a territory that's controlled by a kingdom. So the King of Great Britain controlled the 13 colonies that were on the other side of the ocean. And they did that for many years until the people got tired and started to revolt. So again, as I said, the war broke out over that, and through some miraculous means, the colonies were able to defeat the British Army during that time. And after that point, I think it was another 100 and some odd years before the year actually was 1776 when America actually had become a nation. But during the time of the Revolutionary War we're talking about, we're back in the 1600s. So I explained all that to explain that at any given time, nothing was stopping the British from coming back across the ocean and attacking the colonies once again. And then when years later came, when the Constitution was put in place, it gave you the right to bear arms to be able to protect yourself from invasions and from invaders. And as we evolved into later years and into later centuries, the Second Amendment was then put in place that any time that the government, your government, became so contrary or contradictory towards you that they no longer wanted to represent or recognize the rights that were guaranteed in the Constitution, as they're doing right now. All that's happening, like I said, trying to take away freedoms, free speech, which is all the rage on Twitter right now. That people are talking about the fact that the government was colluding with the previous owner of Twitter to silence free speech, and so were some of the other sites as well. And so it gives you the right to stand up and resist your government if they should try to come in and take control of your life, which is why that amendment was put in, giving you the rights to be able to protect yourself. So again, I do believe in the Second Amendment and the First Amendment as well. The Constitution, again, is the one that gave us, as African Americans, gave us our rights and our freedom. The 13th Amendment was the amendment that abolished slavery. Slavery used to be the law of the land. And see, that's what people don't understand. It's a different era we live in now. It was the law that people could be enslaved, and never ever agreed with it, but that was just the nature of the way things were done back in those days. When the 13th Amendment was added in, it abolished it, which no law struck it down, is no longer the law of the land. So at that point, as I mentioned about being a conservative, my rights as an individual now is just as important as anyone else's rights. And then the 14th Amendment is the amendment that gave us the right to vote. And so, as I mentioned in the previous podcast, that the Constitution is not a perfect document, and it wasn't when it started, but it's the best operating document that I've seen out there for any country. And so there was a conversation that took place during that time period between Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass. And Frederick Douglass was saying that this the best document that exists also. Now we just need to make them live up to their convictions and their morals and their standards, and the thing that they were saying in that Constitution that states that all men are created equal, and we all have these inalienable rights endowed on us by our Creator, that all men are created equal. Let's make them stand up and represent those facts. Because we know at the time that that document was written that we weren't included, but now we are included in it, and we intend to make that document do what it says it's supposed to do. So that's why I believe in the Constitution as well. Um, there's so many things that we could look at. Looking at this 2022 election, and the election cycle has just gotten so ridiculous. It has gone from election day to election week to election month. And conversations I'm hearing from individuals that are stating that election day should be made a national holiday, where on election day, everyone is taking off work, have the ability to take off from work, and those who choose to can go and cast their vote. And I think that's a perfect way of dealing with the voting, because with that being the case, now you can eliminate early voting. Now you can eliminate ballot harvesting, which means just stuffing ballots into a mailbox, not knowing if that's the person that's actually voting or it's someone else. Because in the past few elections, and we definitely know it happened in this election, we had dead people voting. Now you tell me how that works. And so if everybody was given the opportunity, as election day being a holiday, everyone, no matter where they are or what they were doing, will have a day off and they can go and cast their vote, and we'll get back to election day and take all this other travesties out of the election process. Again, like I said, in 2022, it took other countries are now have gotten better at determining the winner and losers of their elections, which used to be the American way. In no more than 24 hours, you would know who won or lost any race. And we can get back to that, and we need to get back to that, because anything past 24 hours, then the conspiracy theory and some of this factual comes into play. And why is it taking so long? And it's people trying to play games with and manipulate the voting process, which discourage people from voting. Uh, Arizona, it took over a week to get the votes counted in Arizona, when in the state of Florida they had it done the same night. So if we all adopt the same voting standards, there's no reason why everyone should not be able to know. You go to bed when the election is over, by the time you wake up the following day, you should be able to determine who won and who lost. And that's how it used to be. I can recall, because I've been voting for the past 40 plus years. And if I didn't see the results that night, when I woke up the following morning, it was there. It's ridiculous that we have to go on with weeks and months of trying to determine who won and who lost any election. It causes people again to lose faith in the process. And so that's where I stand on that. The other thing I wanted to mention, we do have at being an independent. Like I said, I am not Republican nor Democrat. Where in previous 40 years, I've voted strictly Democrat most of my life, and to no end did it garner any benefits on my behalf. So the past 6 years, I have renounced being a Democrat. I am no longer a Democrat after 40 years of voting. Now, most people will have their thoughts and their opinions about that, and that's fine. But again, being an independent, free thinking person with the ability to make choices for myself, the logical thinking person would say after 40 years, what changed? But they don't, they're not being logical. They're being reactionary. They react to what I say I am or what I am not. How can somebody do something for 40 years, then all of a sudden they stop and say, I'm no longer doing that? That would raise a question in my mind. I don't know about yours. And so, because I've seen some things that I know wasn't up to par. And another thing that people don't understand, this is not the same Democratic Party. Just like they used to have the Oldsmobile 98s and cars. Some of you younger folks may not even realize that because they stopped making them. But they said it's no longer your father's Oldsmobile. Oh, I'm saying this is no longer your parents' Democratic Party. Everything has changed. You have a lot of radical socialists who have came in, pushed out all the free thinking people, the moderate thinking people, the middle of the road people have all been forced out or forced to take a position that they really don't support if you're going to be a part of the party. So a lot of those people have been pushed out. And the same thing used to have conservative people. Everybody wasn't the same under one umbrella. You had a one party with a lot of different ideologies and ideas and ways to approach different things. Well, that's no longer tolerated. Those people have been forced out through primary elections, and the socialists are running people in the primaries to force out people that has any other viewpoint other than the one that they believe in. And so the party has been taken over by socialists. And a lot of these people, even now, are trying to remake the country in their own image and what they think it ought to be. And they do not appreciate nor respect the rights of the individual that is guaranteed by the Constitution. They're trampling on the Constitution, and they're doing it on purpose because they want to destroy it and come up with some other constitution of their own, some communist manifesto that they believe in. But in order to put something new in place, you have to first destroy what's already there. And that's what's being happening. So all these different challenges to different things, the free speech, the right to bear arms, and things of that nature are being challenged because they want to do away with it to put their own, a new constitution in place. And so the point I'm making is this is not the party that it was just some 10 years ago. Everything has changed. And I didn't leave the party left me. And so that left me having to figure out things on my own. And the other thing I always want to share, in 2022, you had 20% of the Hispanic population shifted from being Democrats to Republican. They voted that way, and the numbers bear that out. 17% of African Americans, mainly African American men, shifted from the Democratic Party and voted Republican as well. And so you had Asians, same thing. All the groups, you could see those changes, and people are shifting away from that because when the party changed and the ideology changed, it also changed what they stood for, and when it comes to representing their values and their viewpoints. Now Hispanics, a lot of I really understand because a lot of people that came here and became American citizens. I don't know if you're first, second, third generation, whatever it is. They come here from socialist countries, so they know what socialism is. America is getting a glimpse of it now. We have no idea what socialism is attempting to do. But Hispanics, they recognize that and they reject that. They came here fleeing that type of system. So that's why they're shifting from one party to the other. And then, so you look at this, and this is a national thing. It's going on nationally. But again, you got the media that suppresses this stuff. I call them indoctrination stations because they only show you the news where it explains or shows their interest or their narrative. My thought is to give you the news, give you all the facts and information, and let you come to a logical conclusion on your own. I'm not trying to get you to lean to the left or to the right. I'm trying to get you to look at information, be a critical thinker, and learn how to figure out what the best path is for you, for your family, for your life. And I'm not beholden to any party, and I don't see how anyone else can be doing that either, putting a party before your own self-interest. And so that's what the media's done. They're complicit in trying to indoctrinate you or show you pictures or stories about a certain thing to trigger a certain emotion in you to get you to think a certain way, but they're not giving you all the facts. So that's another thing about the Hood Independent podcast is this is an informational podcast. It's we try to keep it light when we can, but for the most part, it's factual, knowledgeable information. There's all type of podcasts, but this is an informational podcast, and I would put it on the level of any news broadcast that you may listen to. 6 o'clock news, as I said before, 6 o'clock news, 11 o'clock news. I just look on there to see what the weather is for tomorrow because I don't look to them to get my news and information and what's going on. You may get some things on there like local events, things that are happening in the community, parades or other ceremonies or different activities that may or may not be taking place in your church and in your community, and they're good for that. But when it comes to talking about the news, especially national news, that's not where I go to get my news. I do my own research, and then I try to bring it to people in a way, a reasonable way, that they can look at it and judge it for themselves on rather how they are to respond to it and not being triggered or uh, uh, indoctrinated by some other system. So this is very much a news and informational podcast, and that's what I intended it to do. That's I said before, we're independent, independent in thought and independent in what we put before the people. But going back, as I said, this is a national movement that's being hid from uh, the local news. They'll never talk about it because they don't want people to know that people are leaving the Socialist Democratic Party, a sinking ship. They don't want people to be aware of that fact. So it takes people like myself and others to bring the information out to people to let you know that this is a national movement. And again, that's why I refer back to Joshua Williams and saying that he is an example of exactly what's going on all across the nation. There's a lot of African American Republic office holders that won election in this past 22 campaign, but they're not talking about it because they don't want you to know these things are going on, or let you know that you have options and that you don't have choices and you don't have to be pigeonholed or chained to one group or one party uh, or one way of doing things. Because this group is so much more that you could know about them. I could say about them, but I'm not. But it's a lot that I know about them again that caused me to change. When after the 13th and 14th Amendment was passed, it passed from that point on and up presently, they have created a box. And I'm talking about the system. They have created a box for a majority of African Americans, and that box was created for us. They expect us to stay in that box. They don't want us to speak out on issues of national security or education or anything else. We're not supposed to have an opinion. We're supposed to be told what we ought to do, what we ought to think, how we ought to feel. And I reject that type of thinking because, like I said, I am a free thinking individual just as anybody else. They don't want you to stand up and rise up against the oppression and the things that are taking place and has been taking place, especially against us for as long as I can ever remember. But you're supposed to grin and bear it and just take it. Well, I say the devil is a liar. I will not subscribe to that, and there's no one that can force me to do so. And so I'm trying to say this to you all to say the same thing. Learn to think for yourself, research for yourself. You have this amazing technology, which is the internet and social media, and it's not all about just fun and games and all the social stuff, which can be incorporated and be a part of it, but there's a much greater value that it offers besides those things. Go on and research things for yourself. Things that you see on TV, if something is not setting right with you, go back and research it yourself. Everything you need to know, you can go on Google or some of the other search engines and find out exactly what is going on and not have to take anyone's word for it, including mine. So I just want to let you know that there is a national change taking place all across this country, and I'm a part of it, and I hope all of you all become a part of it too. We need to move to the center and become independent, make people earn our votes, and just stop giving away your votes. It doesn't matter how well you may know someone in your community, because I experienced this past summer too. When every election come around, when the Congress is on breaks or the House is in recession, these people come home and then you see them all over your neighborhood when they're running for office. When the election is over, you don't see them anymore until the next cycle. And so my thing is, look at their voting records. Look at the things that they say they represent and what they stand for. Here we are now on December the 12th, coming to the end of the year, and for some of these people, the end of the road with their time in Congress. And even at the last hour, they're still trying to rush through billions of dollars in wasteful, unnecessary spending. And it's ridiculous. At this point, they need to be packing up their bags and clearing out their offices and getting ready to go home. But they want to take one more opportunity to take a bite out of and screw the American people out of their hard-earned tax money. So I say things to people like, how much money do you think the government has? Do they have $500 billion? Do they have $1 trillion? Do they have $30 trillion? Because right now the national debt is somewhere around 30 to $31 trillion in deficit. So I say, how much money do you think the government has? And the answer comes back to be zero. The government doesn't have any money. The only money that the government has is money that they turn around and tax and assess the American people for, money they take out of your pockets to turn around and run their programming. Even with the grants and stuff that are given by governments, they tax the American people, take your tax dollars, and then they attach these rules and regulations on what you have to do to be able to get this money when it's already your money in the first place, and it doesn't have to have any conditions attached to it. So that's another conservative principle. I believe in lower taxes, less taxes. I just sat up here and was looking at the debate, at least part of it, between Joshua Williams and Miss Larson, his opponent, and he was stating the same thing: is doing away with the Ohio state income tax. And that's something that I am in favor of also. Now, there's some things that government was meant to do, taking care of the roads, different things of that nature, certain things that they are supposed to do. But what they're trying to do now, they being the government, they want to take over everything. They want to control the education process. Under Barack Obama back in 2016-18, the student loan program for college students, we used to have to go and apply for those programs through a bank to go through the bank and to get the funding to get loans to go to college. Well, the federal government has taken over the student loan process, and we see now it's fell billions of dollars in debt. So then you get the President Biden saying he want to forgive student loan debt, which he does not have the authority to do. The Congress controls the spending, not the president. He can delay it, he can pause it, but he cannot do away with student loan debt. And that was just something thrown out there, popular at the time, to attract young people to come out and vote for that, because here's another freebie, here's another free gift, so I'm going to vote for him because he wants to give me something free, when he knew from the very beginning, at the moment he said it, that he couldn't do it. But it still triggered people and caused them to come out and vote. And now that issue is before the Supreme Court, and it's going to fall, it's going to fail, because he does not have the authority to do that. Congress controls the spending of the money, period, not the president. So that's a falsehood that he just put out there to get people to support him. And the same thing, and so now that you want to go not only to education, now they're looking at free housing, now they're looking at free health care. And as I said in times past, there's nothing free. Everything has a cost to it. To every action, there's a reaction, there's a counter reaction. So there's nothing free. And they look at that. What it's going to cost you in the long run is your freedom. The most valuable thing you have is your freedom, more valuable than houses and money and gold and all the rest of the stuff is your freedom. And that's what you're trading off from. Any time the government gives you something, they want their pound of flesh in return. So you got to stop being triggered and fooled into believing those silly things about somebody giving you something free. Another thing they're talking about, which this country owes us, is reparations. But reparations is not just dollars and cents. It's land. It's things that were taken away from us that would be in our land, in our families, and for generations, where people can live and survive and take care of themselves and start to build generational wealth by building houses and owning land and owning businesses. It's not just the dollar bill. The land, in essence, is more important than the money. So we got to stop looking for handouts and freebies and start going back to the ways of old. Even during the times when we were going through the segregation of the 60s, we did better in those time periods when we were separated from a large portion of society, because it forced us to realize if we don't get up and go to work and learn how to plant crops and raise cattle and stuff, that we're going to starve to death. So we were left to our own devices. They say that necessity is the mother of invention, because we found ourselves in a situation where we had to perform and respond. We did. We performed and responded, and we were better off then. Now we've gotten to the point of entitlement, thinking somebody owes us something. Nobody owes you anything. You have the same right and privileges as anyone else, and you need to get up and go out and pursue them. And that's all I ever say to people. All that I want from anybody is a right to pursue the American dream, to exercise my independence as an individual, and I can have the same rights as a homeless person on the streets, or as Bill Gates or Elon Musk or anyone else. The sky is the limit on where you go. Everybody should be given an opportunity. Not saying that everybody is going to succeed, but everybody ought to have an opportunity to succeed. And that's all anybody owes me or you. So with that in mind, again, like I said, I just wanted to start off this second season looking at that. Be curious, do your own research, and come to your own conclusions on your own, and you'll be just fine. So I'm glad everyone was here. Thank you for your time, and we are signing off.